I'm not going to lie. And I really can't at this point. I'm pretty upset about this. Blizzard Entertainment. Let's talk a little bit about them because I am really upset about this. This is Blizzard Entertainment, a company that when I was younger, I grew up playing their games, and I did so in order to escape some of the toughest times of my life. When I was in high school, things weren't good. There was, as I discovered later on in life, a targeted bullying campaign against me. Well, not just me, there was plenty other people, but I was one of those little Hispanic kids who was just smart and weird. I was weird. I get a lot of what happened to me. But when I escaped from all that mess, from all the stress in my personal life and in my school life, I would go up to the computer lab that me and my friends carefully built, and we would play StarCraft, we would play Warcraft. Myself, I would play Diablo at home because it was a game that I just loved. I loved the second one. And I just fell in love with all things Blizzard, a company that put PC gamers first, a company that really spoke to me. And this little nerd of a guy, really, in all actuality, Blizzard played a huge role in keeping me sane throughout all the insanity that happened when I was younger. And today, I'm online and on Twitter, and I come across this. A post by Jules MC at Psycholis, who worked for Blizzard Entertainment on the Hearthstone team and faced a horrible time. Now, I do watch a variety of videos on YouTube, and this particular one I got from the Quartering, something I started paying attention to when I started to get interested in tabletop gaming and just happened to come across someone who talked about Magic the Gathering. He can be very divisive. He can be very difficult, but when I saw this post, it reminded me of my experiences in the tech industry as a former tech person. Well, I tried, but I didn't want to do it, which is why I am now blue collar, why I'm a blue collar student. But seeing this really, really got to me, because the type of people who do this kind of stuff to people are people who speak really highly about things like diversity and inclusion, but really use it as a way to hold other groups of people that they have intolerance for as a way to get revenge, release their anger, act intolerant the way they feel they've been treated. So in turn, completing a cycle of abuse. I didn't want to make this video. I didn't want to make it about me, because here, let's talk a little bit about this guy right here. Let's talk about Jules MC. The real reason why I left Blizzard Entertainment: racial abuse and discrimination. This is a little difficult because it just brings up a lot of stuff for me. Little things here and there. And I'll talk a little bit about it later. I've written this retelling several times. Too many that we've lost track. When I reached out to attorneys and later the Equal Opportunity Commission during my employment at Blizzard Entertainment in the Blizzard esports team supporting Hearthstone and the Hearthstone Championship Tour, I was the victim of racial abuse and discrimination during the April to December 2016 until I was transferred into the Blizzard esports business operations team. I write this not only to finally get closure, but to tell my story as a minority who was abused and later failed by the leadership. And already you can kind of hear some pain there. Deep, deep pain. And yeah, he's got maybe a viewpoint you don't agree with, but let's listen to a story, really, because there may be some things in here that you find maybe maybe it seems like he's reaching a little too far with some of the things that happen. But overall, it's the accumulation of things coming all together. Because I can tell you one thing, there's a unique viewpoint on this that I'd like to talk about just a little bit later. I joined the Hearthstone esports team as a temporary assignment. February 2016. During this time, I would handle all the day-to-day operations, tournament, inbox, points, events, etc. for the Hearthstone Championship Tour. My team was comprised of Trevor Houston, Drew Higby, and Gemma Barada. Trevor would transform to the Overwatch on the full-time basis, and this is when it all started going wrong, as the team was left rudderless and without a leader. I worked tirelessly on the esports program, growing the tour by 3 times, 400 weekly cups, and at the end of the year, the program would have hosted 1,300 weekly cups, dispensing thousands of points to HGC hopefuls. My time renting with the Hearthstone community would be the highlight of my tenure. So here he's talking a little bit about what's going on. I'm going to try to skip the parts where he's kind of filling in what he has contributed to, because you can read this. I'm going to link it into the description of this video down below. I do want to cover a couple of points that I feel really bring home what's going on with this guy. So here's the part where he's talking about how he had a great responsibility. His friend and now manager, Drew Higby, was there with him. He was feeling like he had a good place here. When I was hired full time, that's when the mood changed. We're no longer a unit but 2 people, Drew and Gemma Barida Mirkovic and me. Meetings, calls, and important components of the tour would be secret to me, and the only task to execute them when things were due or on fire, and I felt more like an outsider. At first, I thought it was normal since I was still new, but having taken a lot of work Hearthstone business operations and whatever little I could help Trevor with, made it so I didn't notice or care of it. This is the part where I wanted to talk a little bit about the part that's coming up right now. This is the part where I wanted to talk a little bit about some cultural connotations. Might be unique as an Hispanic person, it may not. I can't say because I don't speak much Spanish, but I understand a bit of the culture. There's many aspects to being Hispanic. Hey, I usually hate talking about race, but in this case, something hit me kind of deeply here. And this is the part that I want to talk a little bit about. It all changed when Gemma would joke about my sexism or natural inclination to be sexist due to my heritage. Having both been born Mexican and raised in Mexico, Gemma would experience Mexican culture as an exchange student. The assumption then became that I was just like everyone else, and that my attitudes, beliefs were of a Mexican machista, male chauvinist. I didn't take much of this since she said it in jest, but would weigh on me, and I would confide in the missus. Missus referring to his significant other. So he talks about how he came down to Orange County because Miss Marisa Jimenez, that's his wife, I'm assuming, accepted a role at Blizzard Entertainment. I would thankfully join her in November 2013, Game Master Customer Support Team. I had uprooted my life in San Diego for her, and I would do it all again. I knew that Blizzard was her dream job, so I took the plunge and I followed. A machista putting his significant other's career in front of his life. The jokes regarding my machismo and me being Mexican would only become more frequent and finally accumulate in the events that started my descent into literal madness. I was diagnosed with major depression and would later develop anxiety, getting weekly anxiety attacks, then panic attacks, nervous breakdowns, one that almost took my life, and then finally suicidal thoughts. I had measured the amount of rope I would need, the knot, and the place where I was going to do it in Christmas. The rest of the post details this much more thoroughly, but that right there is a perfect summary. And the reason why that really strikes a curve, it strikes a chord with me is on December 24th, around the holiday season, which is when he was planning on killing himself, I had an event where I was feeling much the same way just recently, last year, in fact. The thing is that when you are a Hispanic guy, there is an assumption of this machismo. It permeates the culture, and it is fair that that is the case, because that is definitely a problem that you see amongst much more traditional types inside of cultures such as Puerto Ricans, Mexicans. Everyone all over the map experiences that type of machismo, or I forget what the feminine version of it is, but it's usually talked about as part of machismo culture. But really what it is, it's an extreme expression of masculinity and femininity, both things being problematic inside of Hispanic cultures. The problem is that when you have people who had great intentions to talk about issues, cultural issues, oppression, whatever you want to call it, they had great intentions. But there are people out there who always take things that are well-intentioned and twist it. They use it to get their anger and their hatred out. And what happens here, as he details through his experiences with, what's her name? Gemma, who is someone who didn't actually grow up in the culture but was exposed to it. And because she has the background, she oftentimes feels like she can assume how others are. This is something that happens amongst many people, but between Hispanics, there is a problem with prejudice, prejudging people, an idea of how things should be, and small cultural differences which sometimes collide. And nowhere is that more apparent between what we have now in the United States and what we have going on between foreign cultures. There's a kind of unaware people who are not self-aware. Let's make that a little bit more clear. People who are not self-aware, who are so focused on how things are here and the right way to do things that they don't realize the rest of the world does not have that same view, the rational worldview. We believe fundamentally that the way we've grown up, the experiences that we had, the way we see things are perfect, and that it is rational. And the problem now is that we have a overarching culture which is so focused on different dynamics, such as the black-white dynamic, the dynamic between cultures that may have been oppressed and the oppressors, that we forget there are other groups out there who are excluded. This white-black narrative that we have is so arrogant and so closed-minded to the fact there's other cultures out there with other problems. We take those same principles and we apply it to every situation. It is a one-colored lens for many problems. Photographers don't go out into the field with a prime lens and expect to get the same results for every photo they take. The thing is that when you're oftentimes looking at things one way, everything else becomes blurry and you can only focus on this one thing, and it leaves out people like me, like Hispanics, like those who have experiences that cannot fit into this box that we call diversity and inclusion. Because really, the people who promote it the most are just like the equalists on Avatar: The Last Airbender. People who talk good game. We want to be equal. We want to be equal. But really, what they're looking for is just to not feel powerless. But the way they go about doing it is not to make themselves more powerful, but to make sure those that they feel have the power have it taken away from them. They don't know if they have the power. They know that they don't. And I fully understand it. Like crabs driving people down into a bucket. This is what happens. Jules MC, Blizzard Entertainment, you pushed something that hit me so hard that I had to talk about things a little bit more politically than I ever wanted to do on my channel, because you were the company that helped me when I was growing up. And now, with Overwatch, I don't care that Trace gay. I don't care that Soldier 76 is gay. That's fantastic. Any other time would be. But you guys have betrayed the PC gaming community with this Diablo Immortal bullshit. You're so caught up with what Activision and the shareholders need that you forgot about the general good of the stakeholders in your company, the people that matter the most, the people who brought you to where you were, the gamers who care. The suits, the bean counters that you have behind your counters are so focused on these numbers and so focused on appealing to people, but they will capitulate to the loudest voices in the market who claim that there are issues to distract from the true issues that you are having, which is that you're not in touch with your market. You're sold out your principles and you act as if you still have them. And so this man here, Jules, he suffered because of it. He suffered because you let that type of culture that enforces conformity in your organization. It ignores the actual things. The one who is most reasonable, who speaks the loudest, Jules, was the one who got punished because he wasn't, maybe he was causing some problems. I don't personally know. But the people who were actually causing issues for him, those are the people you ignored. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's because you thought he could take it. Maybe he definitely thought he could. And that's an aspect of being Hispanic, this guilt. Making sure your woman is taken care of. Making sure the women around you know you're not dangerous. Because that is the story you grew up hearing. That's the story you want to make sure doesn't happen. You don't want to represent yourself as an awful human being. And why don't you want to do that? Because you know how people look at you. The scary Hispanic man, there to steal the white women. It's there to harm people. That is the narrative that we came about when we were growing up. We weren't dark enough to fit in with anyone else. And we weren't light enough to actually pass in many cases. That's the angst that many of us have. The emotional passion. We don't think expressing yourself and having emotions is a feminine thing. It is completely masculine to have. And we cut ourselves off to fit in with this conformist culture that says, ration yourself, be rational, be logical. Oh, but because I don't feel good, because I have had all this stuff happen historically, I can say what I want to you. I can just obliterate you because you're tough, you can take it. Man up. And we do. And we stuff it down. We swallow it. We let that anxiety overwhelm us. The anxiety that I had, the anxiety that a lot of us felt, because we know what we have to represent. And that is something that makes a Hispanic man, a Hispanic woman, more than just the next Joe. It's something that no human being should have to do, but it is a cultural aspect that you just find, being the representative, taking care of people, and not always being able to do it. You see it with the Italians, you see it with the Sicilians. It's kind of a meme, it's kind of a stereotype. And yeah, it affects us, but something we can't openly talk about, normally and typically. And I wasn't thinking that I would turn this into something where I'm ranting about Hispanic culture, because who cares? I want to be a gamer. I want to enjoy my stuff. I want to enjoy my hobbies. I don't want to talk about this stupid bullshit. But this hurt me, Blizzard. No, this is what someone out there experienced at your company. And to know that I grew up worshiping you guys because you opened my eyes to a world of possibilities, a world of dreaming, a world of adventure. You saved me from a life that truly hurt me. And to know that behind the scenes, you were doing that very same thing. You allowed this to happen in your office. And now you're sitting here talking about Soldier 76 and his boyfriend and leaving. That's a story I want to enjoy, but this makes me sick. I love Soldier 76. You couldn't do anything to him that would make me hate him, but you can do things that make me hate you. Don't tell me business isn't personal. The stock market changes at the slightest whim and the slightest emotion. Business is personal. People don't buy from you because you just have a good product. They do it because they like what you make. And that is what you have forgotten. That's what EA has forgotten. Or maybe they know it. They know how to use it and tank studios in order to acquire them. You, Blizzard, have hurt me, and I don't know if I'm going to purchase your stuff again. I don't know if I'm going to delete Overwatch tonight, and I don't know if I'm going to edit this video. I'll probably leave it up in its raw form so I can have this rant up, and so I can look back on it and always remember how I felt in this very moment. Jules, Psycholis, what you went through is terrible. It's awful. And I'm glad that Jeremy at the quartering had the forthrightness to actually talk about this finally. And this, we'll say, is a signal boost for it. Completely unedited, completely scripted. This is just me talking about how I feel. And I want you, Blizzard, to know that I don't know if I right now can even have the original StarCraft on my computer. Maybe I can. Maybe they'll bring me back to some better times so I can forget about this, but that's all I got for now. Anyway, if you guys want to help out this channel, go ahead and click the subscribe button down below. You can follow me on Minds. You can follow me on Twitter. You can see my adventures in real life on Instagram. But really, if you have to do anything really important, forget about following me. Forget about this channel, this small channel where I make weird vlogs and play Let's Plays and share my love of Warhammer and mechanics in general. The mechanicum, the fixing of machines, this technology behind science fiction. I don't care about that right now. This guy, Jules, right here, I want you to follow him. I want you to tweet him and let him know how much you support him. And I want you to just make sure he knows that you care. If you do. If you don't tweet him. Tweet me and let me know how much you hated this goddamn video. I can tweet. Anyway, that's it. I'm done.